So thank you everybody for coming today. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your lunch hours or breakfast, depending on where you're located, to come join us here at the Insurance Trailblazer Community Group. I am Danielle Laffey. I am one of the what do we call ourselves? Co-leaders these days. And I think Monica is joining right now as well, who is my other co-leader. We have been kind of running this insurance space for a while, but we are also bringing in a lot of additional content that is not just insurance based, but also, helps you overall with your Salesforce org. And I'm really excited today to have Michael here with us. He is a fellow MVP of both Monica and myself. And we have a really cool topic around the dashboard of zeros, which when I remember Monica very first mentioned it to me, I thought, well, what on earth is that? And when the concepts that she explained it to me, I was like, this is cool. And I had personally not seen this before, so I'm really excited about today. And I think that as people are coming in, if you have questions, Michael had mentioned he's okay with you kind of shouting out and interrupting. Also, if you want to put it in the chat, I will be monitoring the chat as well. So if you have questions that way. But welcome to everybody who is here. I'm excited for you all to be here. I see some new names and faces, as well as a couple of people who have been here over and over again. So I appreciate it. And with that, I will kind of turn it over to Michael to go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Danielle and Monica, for having me. If you haven't restarted the recording, Danielle, you should do that. Happy to be interrupted with questions, but there will be plenty of time at the end as well. So whatever makes the most sense for you. Can I get a thumbs up that my screen share is coming through all good? All right. So, well, thank you for having me. Let's see here. Is it not going to allow me to advance by clicking? It's not. That's going to be fun. Okay. Come on. There we go. My name is Michael Kolodner. I'm an independent Salesforce consultant. I work primarily with nonprofits doing program management on the platform. I'm a member of the Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame. And something you might not know about me, I'm the chairman of the board of a children's theater company that tours nationally, but primarily is based here in Philadelphia. And they do programs for school-age children, young school-age children that bring puppetry and magic into performances that help kids access their creativity. I got started in Salesforce accidentally, like so many people. I did not set out studying to be a Salesforce administrator. I was going to be a foreign service officer and solve the Middle East peace crisis, but I didn't stick with that career and see how well that turned out. I became a full-time dad for about 10 years, and databases kind of stalked me throughout my early career and then my volunteer activities. And when I got back into my first job after being a stay-at-home dad, it was at a small nonprofit. We needed CRM. I was given the task of exploring the options, and this Salesforce thing seemed like a good idea. So we implemented it, and I kind of finally found a database that I didn't hate working with. I was asking questions in the Power of Us Hub, which is the nonprofit Salesforce community. Kind of fell in love with the community and how generous people were with their time and their wisdom. Kept asking more questions, started being able to answer questions, of course, got a full-time Salesforce admin job and the opportunity to attend my first events, including user group meetings and open source sprints and Dreamforce. And then as I grew in my knowledge, I started presenting at events like Dreamforce and Dreamins and user group meetings, and here I am today. Hopefully some of you have heard of my blog called freelikeapuppy.tech, which is mostly in the nonprofit context, Salesforce advice, but a lot of what I write about has much wider application as well. If you haven't heard of it, now's your chance to subscribe and like and share and do all the things. When I'm presenting this live, I mentioned that I have stickers with my awesome illustrations like this. Of course, you can't come up to me afterwards to get stickers right now, but you are welcome to find me at the next event, and I will have stickers with me and happy to share. All right, so let's dive in. We're here to talk about a dashboard of zeros, what nothing can tell you about your CRM data. I don't think any of us really love dirty data, right? I don't know about you, but I always have this like little voice in the back of my head worrying that something I've built might not work, some automation might blow up in my face, or when someone comes to me, often I'm sure, raise your hand, right? People come to you and they say the report isn't right or it isn't working, and my first worried thought is, oh God, they might be right. It might be something I did wrong. Rather than perhaps they built their report wrong or they entered their data poorly. But my biggest fear is that problems in the data are going to cause my automation to blow up on my face or my reports not to work. The biggest bugaboo for so many orgs is duplicates. They just seem to always respawn. I love this GIF, so I'm just going to pause here for a moment and
I
let
was going to say, this GIF is fantastic. This is like the most perfect
I love it.
duplication GIF that we could get. I love it.
Duplicates seem to always respawn. There's not much you can do about it, but you can try to keep on top of them. So we are going to talk about all the different kinds of dirty data. It comes in many varieties. You could have fields that aren't filled. Of course, duplicates I talked about, right? But fields that aren't filled, incomplete fields, inconsistent fields, mistakes people made, opportunity contact roles that don't meet your organization's requirements, automation that didn't work right, wrong fields or unused fields, or multiple fields and people don't know which one to use. In my first full-time Salesforce job at Spark, we had three gender fields in our instance, and at least three, I think it was more, middle name fields, thanks to various managed packages that had installed their own versions. So you had to make sure that, you hide them on the page layout, whatever, but someone might find some weird way to get data into one of those wrong fields. So what is a dashboard of zeros? A dashboard of zeros is a place to regularly look for data that's outside of your defined normal. That's we're going to talk about that. You build exception reports, and then you use those reports so that you can work to bring the numbers down toward zero. Obviously, as in this screenshot, they will not always be zero. You're going to clean things up in small chunks because that's way more palatable than trying to deal with hundreds of records at a time. But when you first import or when you first implement or when you first build your dashboard of zeros, you might find that things are not all zeros. That's okay. This is a tool to help you work toward your goal. In fact, the goal, of course, keeps receding into the distance as well, because like with duplicates, right, things get dirty again. They never stay clean. But I also like to point out that it might take you a while to figure out all the zeros you want to look for. This is an iterative process. You make a dashboard of zeros maybe with 6 components like this one, and you work those down. And then in the course of a discussion, you realize, ooh, there's this other thing that's not clean. Let me make a dashboard of zeros, or let me make a new component to go on my dashboard of zeros, clean that up, and then watch that that doesn't get dirty. Of course, when you're looking for those zeros, they might not all come on the same schedule. So we're going to break up everything we're looking for into manageable chunks. You probably have some things that you look at daily, weekly. You might even have some that are as long as yearly. For example, you can do a report on reports. This is a thing. And you could report on reports that haven't been run for at least a year. If they haven't been run in a year, whatever budget cycle or whatever they were on has probably happened again. If nobody looked at them again in a year, they're probably garbage and it's time to remove them. But you can't clean those up except on that yearly cycle. So different data has different schedules. You'll think about what you need to do and maybe make multiple dashboards of zeros. Now, once you find the errors, what are you going to do? Once you find this bad data, what are you going to do? You're going to ask someone how to fix it. So I love this as a use for Chatter. I think Chatter is really useful. I love to use it in my orgs. And it's great to chatter right on the report. Hey, why are these 10 records wrong? Can you help me clean them up? Or directly on a particular record, hey, Nicole, I see you have 4 opportunities, but they aren't in the right, status. What could we do? So chatter is really useful for that. But chatter's public. So sometimes you might want to do it outside of Salesforce in a direct email message, but it feels a little bad to get an email asking you about something you did wrong or something that's not clean. So this is your chance to lighten it up, maybe just lighten the language, throw in some emoji or a goofy gift like this, just to point out that like, I know we could fix this, but it's not the end of the world that it isn't fixed yet. All right, let's get into what we're putting on our dashboard of zeros. I have broken up audit reports, into 4 main types of reports that are looking for 4 main types of data. The first is duplicates. Already mentioned it. We're going to go pretty quickly through here. You don't even need to worry about taking notes right here because I have literally stolen this screenshot directly from Trailhead. Duplicate management in Salesforce, it's a whole thing. That's why there's a whole trail about it. But if you turn on Salesforce's duplicate management, you can create a custom report type that will show, if you set your duplicates to to report, not alert. Even if you don't stop the user from creating the duplicate, you can have it report in the background. You create a custom report type. Don't worry about how. It's in that trailhead, which I will give you a link to at the end. And then you have a report available of those possible contact duplicates. So for example, here, 2 versions of Luke Skywalker got flagged as possible dupes. And then since the email matched, Luke Skywalter also came into this duplicate record reporting. And now I can say, pretty sure these are the same people rather. I could merge them, although, wait a minute, look at the record type. One of them is a student from our program and the other 2 are individuals, i.e. adults. So it's possible that the parent of the student has the same name. Maybe I need to check with the program staff before I merge all 3 of these. All right, duplicates are easy. We kind of all understand what duplicates are like. So let's move on to the next type, which is empty fields. Now, these are pretty obvious, right? Blank fields, we all know, but I'm talking here about fields that we actually want to use that are blank or null, not fields that are always null. There are different tools like Field Trip and others like that for figuring out what are fields you don't really use in your org. That's not what I'm talking about right now. That's a sort of separate process of culling the fields, changing the page layouts. But once you're talking about fields we know our organization uses, but might have been missed on a record or 2, or when you imported 1,500 contacts and you forgot to map that one other field, and so it's blank on all of them, this is your chance to learn that and fix it. So for example, here we have, it looks like a bunch of foundation accounts that don't have some required information, like what is their funding focus? So this is a very simple kind of report to build. We've just started with records that have a blank in a particular field. You don't even necessarily need a separate report for each field like I've done here, right? I've basically made one report with OR logic. So I'm looking at accounts of a particular type that have either a blank in this field or this field or the third field. Instead of doing 3 different reports, I just have one report for grant maker details are needed instead of missing funder fit, missing funder focus, or missing last research date. So you can group, but it's basically a series of reports that is a particular field null on a particular kind of record. Now we're going to get slightly more complicated. Now we're looking for fields that are weird. right? Fields that aren't blank, but they're outside of what we expect in our org. And this is where it really comes down to knowing your org and how you use Salesforce. It's much harder to talk about this across orgs other than, like I've got at the top, X doesn't equal parameters. The parameters are specific to you. So for example, if you use different stages for your opportunity record types, you might need to watch for records that have a stage record type mismatch because maybe you imported and the import allows you to choose a stage that's not part of the sales process. Or maybe, I've seen this a lot, the opportunity was moving along and then somebody realized it was in the wrong record type. So you change the record type, you or they change the record type, but you don't change the stage at the same time because Salesforce doesn't force you to in the UI. So now you have an opportunity that's in a record type for which the stage it's in doesn't exist in the sales process. Or maybe we as the admin made a mistake and we built an integration that isn't configured correctly for some record types. You have to know your org, your business processes, maybe the stages changed, but the integration wasn't fixed to comply with the new stages. Whatever it is, this is your way of watching for those. So here's a client. This is a client that works with kids starting in middle school. But I have found a report that has a 5th grader. So now, probably it means that the kid wasn't entered into Salesforce correctly, right? They're probably not a 5th grader because we know they don't work with kids that young. So it's time to check with the program staff and say, did you just miskey this? Did they not know their high school graduation year and you did the math and you were 2 years off? Or, because this has happened to me, do we have an exception and for some reason we took a 5th grader? It's somebody's child or it's a sibling who needed to be at the after-school program anyway. That's great. I would like to know which kids are in the room that we're responsible for, but I would also like to understand why we have a 5th grader in our 7th grade program. So you know your org, you know the parameters, you know this is wrong, and then you talk with your colleagues to figure out why this is wrong and still going on. So here, how about current programs? Of course, I'm talking in my nonprofit world, current programs that have no enrolled students. But in your world, it could be campaigns with no campaign members. Why is there an active campaign with no campaign members? What are you doing with it? It could be anything you're doing. So here, these look like some of these programs, maybe they're not ready yet, like the fall program, someone put it in, but we haven't enrolled kids yet, that's fine. But the spring ones that are probably going on right now, we need to ask and find out, like, do you have duplicate programs? It looks like you might. What do we need to do to clean up our data? You might look in your org for opportunities with an amount less than your least expensive product. What's going on there? Maybe it's a discount, or maybe someone messed something up. Or paid opportunities for which the payment type field is blank, someone missed some data. So you just have to know your context and you build reports to watch for what you have found is bad in the past. Okay, now we get a little complicated. We're going to use cross filters to look for records that don't have related records of the appropriate types and determine if that's a problem or not. Now, I do not want to set off the age-old debate about what is a sandwich, which clearly hot dogs, hamburgers, and cheesesteaks are. But in this case, I'm using sandwich as a metaphor. So the metaphor is, do we have a filling, that's a record, with a bread record type top and a bread record type bottom? If not, we don't have a sandwich, or our data is not in the right category. So let's look at how we do this. We're going to build a report. Oh, hang on. Let's pay attention to report type, right? We all know reporting in Salesforce is an art. So report type, let's pay attention. Here we're going to build, for example, a report of opportunities without contact roles. That's our sandwich, right? Opportunities without contact roles. But notice, I have used a plain opportunities report because if I had made a report of type opportunities with contact roles, then the with is going to kill me because the with doesn't mean this object and this object, it means with. And so an opportunities with contact roles report, and then you add a cross filter for with contact roles, you will never get any. If you're running an accounts with opportunities report, and then you make a cross filter for accounts without opportunities, you won't get any. So here we have an opportunities report and a cross filter to show me opportunities without contact roles. Right, you can see if I had done it the other way, I get nothing. Okay. So here is an example where this isn't bad data, but it's a miss in participation that we're trying to catch. So for example, this is contacts who are eligible for graduate credits from my client, my program, but they haven't claimed them. So they have a cross filter for having completed an enrollment. That's what makes them eligible for the graduate credits. But they do not have, or they have a cross filter where they do not have the graduate credit. That means they completed the enrollment, they're eligible for the graduate credit, but they haven't claimed it. Well, that's something we would like them to do. That's part of our program. Again, I can't stress this enough, right? Know your org's data. So here, similar situation, we have enrollments in my client Modern Classroom's core teacher training program. You go through this once. There should not be a reason to complete it again. So if we have a contact who has an enrollment that's completed and they have another enrollment that's active, which means the session is running, or pending, which means it's for a future session, something's weird because this teacher has already done the program and they don't need to do this part of the program again. And so I know that if I see a number come up on this report, it's time to contact program staff and find out what's going on. Maybe there's an allowed exception for some reason, or maybe we need to unenroll them from that future session and let them know why they do not need to go through it again. So again, this is very specific to this client. Something like it might not apply in another organization. So we have had 4 main types of reports, from the simple to the much more complicated. What do we do with them? Well, it's time to build our dashboard, right? Dashboards are really cool. So we have a pile of reports. It's time to think about how and when we're going to check in on them. We throw them on a dashboard or 2 or 3 or 4, and we're going to use my component of choice, the metric component. It's very exciting and it shows a number. Now, the cool thing about the metric is that just like with the gauge component, you can set the colors. And I love doing this because we're going to invert the default settings where it goes green, where it goes red, yellow, green. We're going to invert it where the lower numbers are green and we're going to head up towards red where it's bad. So you get a dashboard like this where zeros are green with the stoplight, metaphor. That's a good thing. Design it with your audience in mind. This is a time to take a moment and think about who's looking at this dashboard. So first of all, do your audience all read these dashboards on tiny little laptop screens? Here, this is from my first job as a Salesforce admin at Spark, as a full-time Salesforce admin at Spark. All of my colleagues at the time were on 11-inch MacBook Airs, this big, including me. So I needed to make the components really obvious and visible. Maybe shorten your titles so that people can see on the tiny little laptop screen what each 0 represents. Of course, maybe you're the only person viewing it. That's okay. But if you want others to see it, this is a chance to subscribe to it, let it email itself to you, and tell your friends to subscribe as well. Sorry, not your friends, your colleagues. Let your colleagues subscribe. Your friends probably don't care. subscribe to it. It's a great way to see those zeros just come into your inbox first thing in the morning. If there aren't any zeros, you clean them up and then you move on with your day. I also love favoriting these because I'm always going back to them all the time. So give it that little favorite so you can get back to it real easy. This is all in the service of making sure that your data is always in tip-top shape, because this is winning. Pulling up that dashboard in the morning, seeing all those zeros, and you can move on with your day knowing that everything is clean and nothing's going to break. All right, I promised some resource links. If you follow this link to the, or use the QR code, I have links to the Trailhead, for example, on duplicate management and some other things. And we have plenty of time for questions. I'll leave this up as people want a chance to copy it down. All that's after it is a thank you screen anyway. If anyone has questions, please go right ahead. Just jump on in.
So Michael, there was a question that came through the chat that I apologize I missed. It was a couple of minutes ago that it came through. And it was around one of the report parameters where, so I apologize, I don't know which one this was exactly, but the X does not equal parameters point. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that potentially a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to assume I can always come back to this slide if people need it. So I'm just going to jump back to an earlier slide. So that's, for example, here. So this is, you're looking at any particular field, right? And the point is, it's not a blank field, which would be a very easy report to make, right? It's a field where we know, we as the admin or the person who's in charge of whatever data for whichever department, we understand there are particular parameters that something that should fall in. I'll give an example. Let's say we're a program that one of my clients works with cancer patients and sends them and their family on respite. And they have, on a respite vacation, they have a program guideline that the participants, I think, can't be older than 55. So if you have a respite recipient whose birth, first of all, if their birth date field is blank, that's a problem. That's the first report. That's going to be X is null. But if their birth date field is a year before a certain date, or more, you would do it based on the age field, of course. If their age field is greater than 55, that's a problem in our data because they don't meet our program requirements, but they're in our program or potentially in our program. So X does not equal, or X is not greater than 55. You would only know that in your org, right? That is a particular requirement of that client's program where they've said 55 is the cap. In your org, you may have, different parameters, or like we're doing here, if we have an opportunity of one record type and its stage is not of one of the stages we've defined, that's a problem. But you can only know that in your definition of the right parameters.
Yeah. I could see that from an insurance perspective. I could see this specifically being done around like some policyholder and product information.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking through, maybe there's a specific asset that you're trying to figure out how to insure, and you want to make sure that if they have this particular product, that all of these parameters are still in order, as an example. And so as an underwriter, maybe going through some of this information, you could look at it that way. As if you're doing agency management, you might have territory situations that this would fall in place with as well, or licensing and appointment information. So if they're in this particular area, they've got these particular products, but you're looking at the appointments that they do or do not have potentially that's associated with that particular group. I could also see this, kind of sticking on that licensing and appointment component, the credits that they need to have, the CEs that they need to have in order to make sure that they are staying appointed and within the particular guidelines to continue to have those appointment rights within the particular products or whatever it is, and the training components that might be with that. Those are just a few examples that I can think of from an insurance perspective. I don't know, Monica, if you have others that you might think of as well, but just kind of trying to bring it back to this particular group.
Yep.
Those are some areas that you might look at.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, one of the ways that you come up with the ideas for what reports to run is when you get these real world emails that says, OMG, we have this client that blah blah blah, or this carrier or whatever, and this is the problem because of this. You're like, oh, I wonder if we have more of those in the system.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to decide what needs a report like this.
Yeah.
A law
Yep.
changes, that happens all the time. And what, like, in insurance, and we just had something happen recently at our firm, and it's like, oh, and now everybody needs cyber liability, and now do they have it? And so I would want to know which clients don't have it, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
So
or I was thinking when you said a law changes, like, if someone comes to you and says, oh, we need to track that everyone has been trained in this new thing, that
absolutely.
might kick off the idea that, oh, this group has told me everyone needs to affirmatively get to this training. But then the flip side is I need to start looking for who doesn't have it
Yes.
in the
Right.
future. So anything could trigger this, but yeah, I love the example of anytime you get that one-off request of like, we found this that was wrong or is changed. And it's
Never
like,
went off.
I bet
It
it's not
turns
the only
out.
one.
Yeah. We
Yep.
hope it's the only one, but it doesn't turn out to be that.
Typically, yeah. Awesome.
Michael, this is just an amazing presentation, and yeah, I've seen it number of times, and I still love it and learn from it, and it's awesome. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. I appreciate everyone. If there's any more questions, please go ahead, come off mute, and I will put this back in case anyone didn't get it in time.
I'm getting a lot of thank yous. This was really great. We got a lot of O's, and I think there were a couple light bulbs that I actually saw through the chat that lit up. Oh, that's how that works, or So I think you definitely got some juices flowing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And Michael, I was going through, I mean, not going through, but looking at your website, the feellikeapuppy.tech. I think that's your blog site.
Yep.
There's a very interesting article there, the extension objects that you posted recently. It's cool. And I was wondering about it, but I didn't know if anyone else was feeling like this as well. So I'm going to go through all of to the entire article. So yeah,
Thank you.
but your blog seems like a good place to, and I bookmarked your blogs and the other
Hi.
side.
Am I audible?
You are now. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I just wanted to ask, just summarizing, just for some clarity, we are creating this dashboard with such reports like X is equal to null, X does not does equal the X does not equal parameters, and there was, I guess, two more. So we create these, and then we check whether there are some, like what you said, dirty data. And then if it's 0, then we know that everything's fine, right?
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say everything's fine, but but yes, everything you've been looking for seems to be fine. Exactly. And I think I heard in there as well, so I tend to create these, and in most of my clients, right, it's the Salesforce admin who
Right.
watches that dashboard. But if you're a larger organization or you have multiple admins, you might have a dashboard of zeros for each department, and they're each responsible for keeping their part of the data clean. So, you might have one of these that's weekly and one of them that's monthly, and then, Someone else has 4 that are weekly or daily. I mean, I check on duplicates daily because it's way more fun to clean up 2 duplicates a day than 14 a week.
Right.
Because so you're going to mix and match for your own specific situation. And maybe you can convince some of your colleagues to look in on these and keep them clean. Or maybe you look in on them, and because you're the person who's ultimately responsible for the cleanliness of the data, you're watching, but then you have to ping it over to them to say, I don't have the knowledge to know what's right. You need to clean this up, and then let me know it's done.
Right. And what are we like? Sorry, I know I'm asking like a really dumb question,
No,
but
That's fine.
no question is a dumb question.
thank you. But what is this exactly leading us to? Like, what are we trying to achieve with this? Okay, I've created a dashboard. I've seen that there are some duplicates, there's some dirty data, but how else does this help us?
That's a great question. I mean, the real answer is it depends. I mean, clean data means good reports. Clean
Right.
data could mean less liability. Clean data
Yeah.
means you're going to pass your audit or less liability, audit risk. It really depends. I think on one of the earlier slides, for example, let me see if I can find that slide. I have a dashboard that has a lot of non-zeros. Yeah. Oh, it's not on this slide, but one of the slides has, or one of the dashboards in real life has, students without release forms, so that's a liability problem, right? I don't want students showing up to my program who haven't signed the release form, whose parents haven't signed the release form. So, I view that number on the dashboard as risk management. I'm watching that one so that everyone has signed all the forms so that we know if there's a problem. And then next to it, I have a number for medical forms and, hospital authorization, whatever you need. This is risk management.
I can speak to that on the insurance side. The bad data can cost your agency or your company not only millions of dollars, but it could put your company out of business, believe it or not. There are
Right.
so many errors that our only product is our data in insurance. That's it. We don't have a physical product. And with bad data, the more bad data you have, the more bad data you're going to get. And you have everyone that works in insurance is basing decisions on that data and actions on that data. So let's say your renewals, which I've seen, were missing. The data for the renewal was missing, so the policy didn't get renewed, so the client doesn't have coverage. And I have seen that happen in another org due to data issues. So this data in our industry is so critical. And it is, people think it's busy work and like, oh, so what? It's a little bit, our data is not perfect, but that's just,
Yeah.
so
I see.
it's important.
Thank you
I
so much,
recently,
both of you. That really clarified the entire situation and how it helps us. Thank you.
yeah, Monica, that is so insightful from an insurance
Yeah.
perspective. I recently had conversations around premium leakage and how, bad data leads to premium leakage. And part of that is your agent putting in, crazy numbers in order to make sure that your rates are different or correct and being
That's
able
correct.
to do that kind of thing. So you are spot on when you say it truly costs them, up to millions of dollars or losing their business
Yep.
because of certain issues like that and or compliance issues. So if you don't have your data right and you're not up to compliance and you go in and get audited, there's severe repercussions for that. So
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So important. It's important in every industry, and people sometimes downplay it and think, oh, well, it's just busy work. Oh, it's never going to be perfect. you have to aim as close as you can get, and that's what Michael is what you're doing, and you're making it easy to spot it. Instead of me having to run reports, I have a list of, I think I used to have a list of like 50 exception reports, you know, and I knew that all of these things I had to click on the report to check. One, click, 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 click through 50 to keep our data clean. Well, this is so much easier. It's awesome, Michael.
And, you know, the other thing, I don't put it in the presentation because it's sort of a side note, but there are times we all find this as Salesforce admins where it's like, well, you know, I don't want someone to be able to add this and do that, you know, and you can't necessarily build a validation rule or an automation, you know, or if you did a validation rule, it's a terrible user experience because it rolls back your entire screen flow or whatever. So often, you know, what I will compromise with is, all right, we're not going to build a validation rule, but we're going to build a dashboard of zeros to check for this. And then, sure, it's after the fact we catch the problem, but at least we catch it. So, you know, it could be, you know, a certain policy that, you know, doesn't have this factor. And you're going to have to go back to the, you know, the agent and say, well, you know, you have to fix this policy. It's missing something, but at least you don't fix it or not find it until the coverage didn't exist.
That's right. Life cycle management, because in policy, there's a long life cycle. And so you can't have validation rules on everything or people can't do their work. They start the policy before they have 100% of the information, and they have to add it gradually. And then you have all the related objects of the insured assets and the properties and all of these things. And this property over here that has a pool shouldn't be with this carrier, you know, and that's a liability issue if you placed it with this carrier and you didn't realize they had the pool, you know. So there's all this related object stuff that Michael's solution is perfect for, because you can't do this, you know, in some other way sometimes. So, yeah.
Yep, that's where the sandwich comes in, right? That's
right. Exactly. The complexity of all these things. Yep. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Great session. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you so much. So many good insights and so many new things to learn. Very nice session.
You're welcome.
Thanks all.
Awesome. All right. Well, we've got some fun, new, exciting topics that are coming up here in the next coming months. And Monica and I are actually even considering doing some pre-recorded video ones as well. So stay tuned on that one as we kind of think through that. Michael, I just want to thank you so much for taking your time to come in here and share your insights. I'm so glad Monica had seen this before and was able to coerce you in to come in and work with us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks all.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time today. We'll be posting all of this information out there for you to be able to see. And Michael, are you sharing your PowerPoint as well that we could put on the community page maybe?
I can send that to you. Sure.
Awesome. So we'll post that onto the community page if you're not part of that community page. It's a little weird. You'll get the Bevy pages here, which is our community page. And then there's also a discussion page, which is separate. So I'll make sure that gets posted there. It's a private group. If you are not part of it, please go ahead and make sure that you become part of that discussion group too. We try and put all of our stuff out there as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Happy Friday. Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.